Good morning. I'm Kim Kerr, Senior Vice President of Enterprise Sales and Operations for UScellular, and I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, who is my boss, the Chief Executive Officer and President of UScellular, Laurent Therivel, or LT as he prefers to be called. UScellular's journey began 40 years ago as it sought to create wireless networks in underserved cities and rural communities across the 21 states and footprint, where getting wireless service can be very challenging. Today, we are the fourth largest carrier serving millions of customers, and our mission is to connect people to what matters most to them. LT joined UScellular as our CEO in July of 2020, bringing 15 plus years of telecom experience in the wireless industry, including more than 10 years at AT&T, where he served various roles such as Chief Financial Officer of AT&T Business Solutions, Senior Vice President of AT&T Small Business Solutions, and CEO of AT&T Mexico. Prior to his career at AT&T, LT was Chief Operating Officer at IP Celerate, Inc., and he spent time in his early career at Bain & Company. He also completed 4.5 years with the U.S. Marine Corps, earning the rank of captain and serving as a telecommunications operations officer in California and a communications officer in Southeast Asia. He earned his bachelor's degree in business administration and marketing from Texas A&M University, if we have any Augie fans, and he earned his master's in business administration from Harvard Business School. Please join me in welcoming LT to the stage.
Oh, I get walk-up music. That's kind of cool. Good morning. Thank you for the warm introduction. Thank you all for being here and for giving me a chance to chat with you this morning. I appreciate it. This is a fantastic group. It's a fantastic organization. It's one that UScellular is deeply committed to. I'm going to focus most of my talk today around a word, partnership. And before I get into sort of the meat of talking about partnerships, I want to recognize some of our partners. Some of them are formal partners. Some of them we're hoping will be formal partners. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge by the time we're out of here. But these are folks who, at least what we have observed in looking at the industry, looking at this space, are really leading the pack. And I also want to just take 1 second to recognize Excel, who is our host for this. You could join me in giving them a round of applause, please. That word partnership, it's one I'm going to go a little bit deeper into. And if you're going to partner with somebody, and a lot of what we are doing with UScellular, and it's not just us, it's our competitors as well, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, others, right? We're wanting to partner with utilities in this space to move it forward, to better serve customers, to advance technology. If you're going to do that, if you're going to be a partner, it's important to know what the motivations are of your partner. And so I actually want to talk a little bit today about how cellular companies view this space and how cellular companies view private networking. And I'm going to start with a bit of a provocative comment, which is that at face value, we don't love private networks, right? And the reason we don't is because we try to put a pretty darn good product forward in our public network. Right, we try to provide a product that is reliable, that is safe, that has the right amount of control, the right amount of security, the right amount of coverage. And so, almost, if we go down the path of private networking, it's kind of admitting that our public network isn't doing what you need it to do. And that's a challenging thing for us to admit. Right? That's a challenging thing for us to wrap our heads around. And so, what we hear back from utilities is, well, we want more security than your public network can provide, more control than your public network can provide, or we have certain assets, right, whether it's towers, whether it's spectrum, that we'd like to use and putting a network forward and better serving our customers. And we in the cellular industry have kind of resisted this for a little while. For those of you that have been in the space for a bit, this has been an uneasy partnership. right? I think the reason it's been an uneasy partnership is because of that admission about, well, we'd really like to serve you with our public network. We'd like to make as few modifications as possible to what it is that we do and still try and meet your needs. I don't feel like that has worked particularly well. And so what you've seen in the last couple of years, I would argue particularly from UScellular, but also from my competitors, is a bit of a pivot, right? And we really are leaning into this space. And I hope you're seeing it from us in the way that we're engaging. Kim Kerr is on the board of UBBA. We have a lot of people at this conference. We want to sit down and partner with you to make this space successful and help you serve your customers better and help you realize those technology advances that you're trying to drive. And I want to talk a little bit about why. What is it that has changed? What is it that has changed for wireless companies that makes us eager to partner and eager to engage in this space? And there's three big reasons. The first is financial, the second is technical, and the third is, call it, mission and culture oriented. And I want to start with the financial piece. And I want to explain the space that wireless companies are in right now. And this has nothing to do with utilities, right? This is simply taking a step back and saying, where is the wireless industry right now? When I put a cell tower up with all the bells and whistles that come along with it, and I put that cell tower in rural America, it costs between $600,000 to $1 million per cell tower. And then that's the tower itself, that's the radios that go into that tower, it's the roads, it's running fiber to it. It is an expensive endeavor to connect the US, and it is a particularly expensive endeavor to connect rural America, which is what UScellular focuses on. We at UScellular, our competitors, have been spending capital at huge rates over the last, call it 20 to 30 years, connecting the US. And I want to paint a picture for you about what that looks like. This is a graph of capital intensity. Many of you probably know what capital intensity is, but just for the sake of defining it, capital intensity is the amount of capital that you have to spend for every dollar of revenue that you take in. And so the lower your capital intensity, the more revenue you're getting on every dollar of capital. The higher it is, the more capital you're having to spend. On average, industry like us, 15% or so is a pretty healthy level of capital intensity. If you look at this graph, it shows you what capital intensity looks like on the early days of 3G. 3G capital intensity was super high. We were spending way more capital than we were taking in revenue, and that was fine. And the reason it was fine is because we knew this in the early days of 3G, mobile phone penetration in the US was still fairly low. Not everybody had a mobile device. And so we could see this future, and the future was, well, we're going to put towers out there, we're going to provide coverage, and more people are going to get this cool thing called a mobile phone, and that's how we're going to recoup our investment. And it worked, right? What you saw is you saw capital intensity go from incredibly high levels in the 30s, right? And it dramatically dipped. And the reason it dramatically dipped is we put a bunch of coverage out there. People bought phones, people bought mobile phone plans, and the revenue started to come in to cover the capital that we had to invest. Healthy industry. 4G and LTE. We built our 4G and our LTE networks for a very specific purpose. And that very specific purpose was mobile video. We saw in the early days of 3G, people wanted to watch video on their mobile devices. If you've tried to watch video on a mobile device on a 3G network, it is not a good experience. And so we had to change. And so we invested in 4G. And we placed billions of dollars as an industry into 4G networks. New towers, new radios, much more spectrum. But even with all those investments, what you don't see is capital intensity going up. Capital intensity stayed pretty flat. And the reason is because we took in revenue, the industry got revenue that basically covered the capital we were spending. People were willing to buy more expensive data plans, right, and sign up for higher price points in order to get that mobile video, in order to get that LTE experience. And so there was this nice match between the capital that we were spending and the revenue that we were taking in. Then 5G rolled around. Now 5G is a little bit different than 4G. And the reason it's different is with 4G, we were able to point at a specific use case. And we were able to say, well, people want mobile video, and so I'm going to invest in network to serve mobile video, and there's this clear connection between what consumers want and the investments that we're putting in place. With 5G, the 5G was not kicked off with any specific customer use case in mind. The 5G investment race was kicked off because of the Korean Olympics. So if you remember, the Summer Olympics that were in Korea were billed the 5G Olympics, and Korea said this is going to be the first 5G Olympics, and we're going to have 5G out there before anyone else. And the Chinese said, the hell you are, and they started to invest to match Korea. And when the Chinese and the Koreans start to invest, the US government comes to wireless carriers and they say, well, what are you doing about this? And either AT&T or Verizon started investing in 5G. And if AT&T or Verizon start to invest in 5G, then Sprint and T-Mobile do as well. And then so does UScellular. Because what you can't have is you can't have a marketing situation where one of your competitors is marketing 5G, whether consumers need it or not, and you're not. So all of us kicked off this 5G investment cycle. 5G, I've got to run fiber not just to the tower, I have to run it to the top of the tower. Right? All of my radios actually have to be connected directly with fiber. That's a very expensive endeavor. The radio equipment I have on the top of our tower weighs about the same as a small car. So I've got to lug a small car up all 4,000 towers that we own and all 7,000 towers that we have in total. And that's much greater, obviously, for some of our competitors that have a national footprint. Huge investment in 5G. But the problem was that we didn't have those specific use cases that customers said, well, I am willing to pay more because you are investing in 5G. And so what happened is capital intensity went up significantly. Capital intensity went up north of 20%. This is for the industry. This isn't for UScellular, although ours is identical. So what happened is we're having to spend a ton of capital, but we're not getting the revenue that comes in. And that makes it very challenging for us to continue these investments. Now, a brief side avenue, Kim asked me to talk about this briefly. This is not the purpose of my talk, but you may find it vaguely interesting. You'll notice at the end there, 23, 24, I can't remember if I've got 24 estimate. Yes, I do. 23, 24 estimate, you see capital intensity going down. Good for the industry, right? Not necessarily. The reason it's going down isn't because we're taking in more revenue. The reason it's going down is because we're spending less capital. We've pulled back on capital spend as an industry, and that's not good for the United States. Today, China has 7 times the number of 5G base stations that we do in the US. Now, for the engineers in the room, you'll say, well, yeah, but they have a lot more people. You're right. They don't have 7 times more people. Right? So they have a denser grid than we do in the US. They have also approved the clearance of over twice as much mid-band, full-power, licensed spectrum than we have in the US. So they have both a denser grid and they have a lot more spectrum that they are clearing for use. And so today, the average Chinese has 70% access, 70% more mobile capacity than the average American. And that number will increase to north of 150% in the next 3 years. And that's a problem. And the reason it's a problem is because innovation and technology follows this investment that we're making. So the investments that we made in LTE were designed for mobile video, but they also let Uber happen. Right? We didn't plan for Uber, but you can't do Uber on a 3G network. And so the 4G LTE investments enabled Uber, and they enabled DoorDash, and they enabled mobile video FaceTiming and everything else, right? All of these new technology advancements, and they happened in the US. And the reason they happened in the US is because of the investments that my company made and that our competitors made to enable it. We are pulling back on investment right now. That's not a good thing. Right? You want us investing. And so the question is, financially, how do we crack this code? Well, one of the ways that we have to crack this code is we have to find new revenue sources. And those new revenue sources are going to come from other people who want access to our networks and want us to modify our networks and want us to change the parameters of our networks so they can enable their solutions. And that's the financial reason why we're leaning into this space so hard. I love this space. Kim super loves this space, right? We have people on Kim's team that love the space even more than we do. But all that love notwithstanding, there's a real financial imperative for wireless companies to be involved in this space. And it's because we have to find revenue to help justify the investments that we've made in 5G. 5G starts to enable a lot of things that you want to do, and I'm going to get into those technical things in just a moment. Right? But we've got to find revenue. And this is a great space for us to do that, partnering with you to help grow the pie. So that's the financial imperative. There's a technical reason why we can support this space. And it's because over time, what we've been able to do is we've been able to architect our networks in a way that makes it easier for us to support your needs. So call it yesterday, the last few years, we had a relatively monolithic network, integrated end-to-end, not flexible, not open, not cloud-based. And consequently, if customers like you wanted more control, we were unable to give it to you. It's not, even if we wanted to. Right? We didn't have the parameters available. We didn't have the levers available in our network to do it. That has changed. So we now today, at least the UScellular solution that we're providing to many of you, combination of sponsored IMSIs, and which allows the public and the private networks to be much more integrated, roaming deals that allow you to fall back to the public network when it's necessary, security that can flex up and down based on your needs. That gives you the increased control that you need, the increased security that you need to accomplish many of your objectives in this space. And tomorrow, what you're going to see, 5G continues to expand as we start to expand our SA core. What you're going to see is much more open interfaces, open networks and cloud-based networks, networks that are modular, where you can select access to individual pieces as you need them to. And it's easy for us to do because we simply enable it with an API, as opposed to having to completely redesign our network for one customer's needs. Far better intrusion detection, data privacy, far better security parameters. And that then gives you not just increased control and increased security, but also increased visibility. And so the technical developments that we've seen have enabled us to support a partnership like this in a much more efficient manner. And so what we can now do is we can help utilities on your journey to wherever it is that you want to get. And I have kind of a continuum laid out here. This continuum, the top right of this continuum, is not right for every single utility, maybe right for many of you. But what we can now do is we can enable this journey. And many of you may be on the bottom left, right, where it's simple, where what you're focused on right now is mostly VPN based. But then the first step in your journey may be, well, I'd like to be able to have better security over my data. I'd like to be able to separate the data plane out so that I can keep my customers' data resident with me, but keep the core and the RAN with the MNO. We can enable that. Maybe then you want to take the next step and you want to say, okay, well, I'd really sort of like to have my own core. I'd like to move beyond simply the increase in security, and I'd like to be able to have greater levels of control. We can help you with that. Or finally, maybe you say, you know what, I'd actually like to own certain portions of my RAN. I have spectrum I'd like to bring to bear. I have towers I'd like to bring to bear. I have infrastructure and assets that I'd like to use to get a better return on those assets and to better serve my customer. We can support you on that journey as well. And we can do this because our network is now modular enough and open enough and to where we can support you on any step of this without having to completely re-engineer the way we do business and the way our network architecture is established. And we've coupled that in the case of UScellular, this is the one sales portion of my talk, with a set of services. So I talked earlier about the sponsored IMSI solution. Right, we have a set of connectivity services that can help you along on this journey. We have a set of professional services. Right? You may not have the expertise. You may not have the butts in seats that can help you get all this done. We do. And so we're perfectly happy to help you on that journey. And finally, if there's portions of that network that you don't want to manage and you don't want to maintain, or a portion of those services that you don't want to manage yourself, we also have a managed services group that can help you with that as well. And so it's the technical solution as well as our business model has shifted. That's the second big reason why companies like mine can now lean into this space in a way that we hadn't before. The first is the financial necessity. The second is the technical and the business model modularity that allows us to support you. The final one is more mission-based. Kim talked about our mission earlier. Our mission is to connect people to what matters most. Bridging the digital divide is something that's extremely important to our company. This really got laid bare for me during COVID. Being connected was important before. During COVID, you realized that it was a necessity. And not just to stay connected to your friends and family from an emotional support perspective, but you would hear about these horror stories about kids camped outside of McDonald's using their Wi-Fi to do their homework because they can't go to school, but they don't have any connectivity at home. Bridging this digital divide is important. It's personal. I've been in this industry for a long time. Kim mentioned I was in the Marine Corps. I was a communications officer in the Marine Corps. I've been doing this my whole career, and part of the reason that I do it is because I feel like I make a difference. I feel like what I do is important. What we do is important. It is meaningful. But the beautiful thing about UBBA and the beautiful thing about the partnership and the solutions that we can deliver is that we also are bridging the digital divide in a slightly different way. These are my folks. I don't usually do this. I usually use my parents in slide presentations. So my dad is 95. My mom is 86. They are celebrating their 65th wedding anniversary next year, right? I love my folks. They are Luddites. I mean, they do not care about technology at all. They want nothing to do with it. My dad doesn't have an email account. They still have the blinking light on the VCR that puzzles them, right? But there are two areas where my parents excel in technology. The first is my mom is like the world's greatest Facebook poster. She has more likes on her posts than anybody I've ever seen. But the second has to do with energy. My parents live in Houston. They were affected by many of the hurricanes that rolled through there recently. They've had brownouts, they've had blackouts, they've had to go buy a generator. The heat in the last couple of years is really tough on my mom. And so having consistent access to energy, knowing what power is going to look like, knowing what they can do in order to have backup power sources. My mom spends more time on this than you could imagine. It is personal to her. And because it is personal to her, it is personal to me. And so this is another aspect of bridging the digital divide. The stuff that makes the headlines are the kids camped outside of McDonald's. But the stuff that we do in this room, it makes a difference in people's lives. It's not immaterial. It's not just an economic exercise or a technical exercise. It's a deeply personal exercise. This stuff really matters. It matters to your customers and it matters to my customers. And because our mission is connecting customers to what matters most, this is the final reason why we want to partner with everybody here. And so I hope you will see, right, that we're putting our money where our mouth is. We have a lot of people here. We want to engage with you. We want to work through these co-solutions together. This is not something we do on our own. This is not something you do on your own. This is done via partnership. That partnership is meaningful to us. It's meaningful to us financially. It's meaningful to us technically. And most important, it's meaningful to us culturally. We look forward to partnering with all of you. My team looks forward to partnering with you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your attention. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your session. Cheers.